Welcome back to the Jay Walking Podcast. I'm your host, Jay. We're telling one story at a time while taking one step at a time. Today is all about just therapy. And I'm not just talking about traditional therapy, I'm just talking about the stigmatization around Black people and therapy. Just like the title itself, therapy ain't just for white folks, it ain't just for Asian folks, it's not just for, other people, around the world that goes to therapy. There's always been a stigmatization around just Black people and just kind of how therapy should look like, or what the average Black person should, carry themselves when it comes to mental health. So if you can relate to this episode, you could please listen in and tune in and just hear the perspective of like a Black nerd going through therapy themselves. But also, if you can relate to this yourself, share it in the comments, below of this episode on Spotify or YouTube. But I just want to bring all my Black people in this space up to the front and just have a serious heart to heart conversation with them, because there has been a lot of stigma or stereotypes when it comes to the strong Black man or the strong Black woman, when it comes to just mental health and just seeing therapy as not the greatest thing. Because I know for me at that time, back then, like therapy was not something you should go to, because therapy, if you go to therapy, you should, go see a psychiatrist because there's something wrong with you. Or that was seen as like, oh, you need therapy, like that needs more of a mental health, like, direction, or you're just crazy, or you just don't know how to deal with it, or you're not mature enough to deal with certain things in life. And it just created a lot of stigma around therapy, at least for me at that time, where it was just one of those things that I was always trying to avoid. Because what is emotion? Why do I need to talk about it? I just need to get through the day and just kind of push forward. And that's pretty much been a lot of our stories when it comes to just being an African American, the great old S of A, and just dealing with our own struggles, our own issues. And some of that is still playing out currently in today's society. But that's a whole nother episode and a whole nother topic at hand. But I just want to talk about the stigmatization around, you know, the strong Black male or or woman figure, and just being open about my own personal therapy, and just kind of share with you, like, what I've learned as a Black nerd in America. So for my therapist journey, not gonna lie, I did not believe in that growing up. I did not care for it. I just kept believing, like, just grinding out, grind through, just keep it moving, keep it pushing. What is emotions? I could talk to somebody about it, but that'll be it. And that was helpful for me at certain points in my life. But then it got to the place where I just had so much anger and bottled up the emotions from whatever it could be, whether it's from a former relationship, a friendship falling out. Hell, I didn't beat a certain boss in a video game a certain amount of times, like whatever it can be. I just kept it held in. And even when I started in therapy, around middle school, going into high school, I had a therapist named Chris. He always showed up at my house, every, 2 weeks, like twice a week. And he was pretty cool. And I talked some good points with him. And he even brought up the idea of, like, recording and placing my poetry onto YouTube. And I did that a handful of times because I did it on Facebook instead of YouTube. But it was a great outlet that I learned from him, like, hey, this is something I can do with my emotions and just work on my therapy, so to speak. And I had a psychiatrist too who gave me antidepressant meds and just, mood stabilizers, anything you can think of, that was like given to me and stuff. But then at some point, I decided for myself, like, I don't need this. And again, playing on to that stigma of like being Black in America and just being Black with therapy, I slowly but surely just did not take my meds, and I just dealt with, leaning off of it. And for a long period of time, I just held my emotions in and did any other thing to either disconnect from the emotion or let my emotion burst out, and just kind of just let it happen and just try to pick up the pieces, afterwards. And I didn't really take therapy seriously until I joined the field of social work and focus on more of that mental health aspect in the field. And I did not realize how much I was either suppressing or holding in until I started to continue those classes. And all started in Palm Beach State while I was taking sociology classes and just learning more about like, stigmatization around certain communities, culture, and how that plays in society and how society is affected by social media, and how it impacts therapy and how therapy is seen. And over the course of the years, like therapy and just social norms have changed, at least in my time, of not only just like the stigmatization around therapy for Black people, but also how Black people are shown, you know, in media and just how they show up, whether it's in movies, TV shows, anime, or even just your own personal experience with your own family and friends, and how stoic or emotionless we have to show ourselves in order to just survive and just deal with things. So just to go back to my own journey, like I remember attending FAU after community college. Great experience. Go Owls. I'll always represent FAU because that was the school that I graduated with my bachelor's degree in social work. So go Owls. But I remember it was one day I was just going through so much of a mental, you know, anguish. I was angry, sad, and I was just dealing with a lot of emotions at the time when I was going through a lot from, again, like I stated in the previous episode, from 2018 to late 2021, going into 2022. I was just a whole different person, different mindset. And there was certain demons that I always refer to that I was holding on to. And I didn't know how to do that. So it was one day that I just walked around campus, and FAU had a great system called CAPS, which basically, all the therapists and just the privacy of confidentiality of like anything you need to share and think and express, that was the place to go. So I went just one random day. I was like, fuck it. I remember I had on jeans, a light blue, you know, shirt that was buttoned up with some plaid patterns with some little bit of yellow, and I had shoes to match with it with my regular book bag that I hold on to this day. And I just went, I signed up, and there was two therapists that was available at that time. It was uh, a guy and it was a lady, in there. The lady, she was Asian, she was pretty short, and the guy was pretty tall, and I think he was a Caucasian male. I'm not too sure, but I was waiting, and then I wanted to challenge myself around that time. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go with the woman therapist, only because at that time I still had that fear of interaction with women in general, because around sixth grade ish I was bullied, mainly from women. So I was just like, you know what? In order to challenge myself, in order to gain some sort of communication, and represent, like, not representation, but like repetition of like interacting, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna just go there. So I went. Her name was Twee, lovely lady, and I love that lady to death. Like literally, like if I had a chance to talk to her again and just do it all over again, I would do it immediately, because she was the first, like, well, I wouldn't say first woman, but just for the simplicity, she was one of the very few women that I was able to express all my feelings and kind of like had that slow buildup of like talking a little bit to then like revealing all like my patterns and just strategies and my own like issues to her. But I remember the first session, I was kind of guarded. I was just not into it because I didn't believe in therapy. And I believe, like, emotions wasn't a thing to express or talk about. And then I don't know what question she asked, but she worded it in a way where it felt so comforting and safe. And there was like no judgment of whatever answer I gave. I gave like a genuine answer for a handful of the, interactions with her. And then immediately she kind of harped on it and continued to work in this place of compassion and like no judgment of what I was saying. And it felt like everything was normalized of like, oh, did you watch like porn, like, consistently? I mean, that is a normal thing as a person to interact with and like use. It just when it impedes on your daily life, like, then that's an issue. Or when I was talking about, oh, my emotions, like I barely get to express. And then she mentioned like, did it feel safe, to not express those emotions at the time, or and you're worried about other things? And it just kept opening up conversations where I was able to express genuine concerns and genuine things to go through about that time. And it was just such a great experience to even deal, with those emotions in that moment with people. So that was at least a little bit of my journey. But to kind of tie into what I was saying about these certain like stigmas and social things that came into it was the fact that most of us had to be emotionless. Most of us always had to be that protector, the hyper masculinity, and all these other things. That was just something that always showed up in the story of being a black man and just in America, but also dealing with their own therapy, is the fact that we always had to be the protector or this hyper masculine person where we couldn't show our emotions. We just had to grind out through the mental health. We always had to say like, oh, therapy was just only for those type of people, not for us. And just when we do express and open our emotions, we're criminalized by it, whether it's through our own people or even with the idea of other people and the media and how we are represented is criminalizing our emotions and stating like, oh, this is something that is going to happen. We have to be the Superman of the whole genre, like you had to be the person that everyone can rely on. And the other thing was like, you had to be this sexual being where you couldn't just not be like a regular person. You just had to use your own emotions, through sex or just through these things, but you can't show your emotion. And growing up, I had to deal with that a lot, whether it was directly or indirectly when it came to just expressing those emotions where I just felt like I had to do it in so many other different ways instead of just actually talking about it. And even now, just being in the field and helping so many different, teenagers and clients in my lifetime, they're not, black, obviously, but there's a handful that can still relate to that stigma of therapy and just stuff like that. And I always tell them too, like, I struggle with that. I struggle with how mental health is viewed and stuff. And that gives me a connection with them and that experience of being able to just tell them, like, hey, bro, going to therapy is normal. Going to therapy and talking to someone about your emotions, thoughts, and feelings is a normal thing. And you should go to it if you have the opportunity to. Now, obviously, not a lot of people can do that, whether it's financial or like again, the stigma that is surrounded, you know, just therapy itself. But just again, talking to my black folks. And again, if you can relate to it, listen in. But just for you guys and gals in particular, I want us to normalize, mental check-ins with certain people, whether it's your mom, dad, friend, family member. You should go check on them because you may never know what someone's going through. You don't know where the person's at in life. So I highly encourage you guys to just do what you can and do what you need to do to mentally check in on yourselves, whether it's again talking to someone or even chatting to someone on the phone, wherever it could be. Just you need to do that for yourself. And I encourage you to look at resources and being able to use what you can around you, whether it's through school, your own family members, or even a friend of a friend. Use the resources around, whether it's the digital. We in the age where we can literally go on our phone and look up, like, the suicide hotline number or someone to chat with us, who don't even know us, to be able to remotely chat with us and talk to us, to go through that experience, what we're dealing with at that moment, and to talk ourselves out of it or to allow our space to communicate. I always highly encourage too people to go to therapy because as someone who didn't believe in therapy themselves, therapy is such a great way to just look at the patterns of not only your own family, your own experience in your own life, but then once you learn more about yourself, you can take others around you further to where you're at when it comes to their own mental health. Whether you're checking in on them or you tell them straight up, hey, you need to go to therapy because this will be beneficial, wherever it could be. So to all my black people, just utilize therapy and just know therapy is not a weakness. You're gaining wisdom for going, because not only you're gaining wisdom for your own patterns, your own stuff, you're gaining patterns that will then help you teach others and help them if they were in the same place as you. So please utilize mental health, utilize all your resources, and utilize the friends and family around you, because at the end of the day, us black folks, like, we need therapy. We need to focus on ourselves and growing our own popularity in regards of like this culture of like, hey, you can go to therapy and still be the person that you are to others. You don't need to fake it. You don't need to put on a mask. You definitely don't need to not show emotions or be this hyper masculine, highly sexual, being. Like, you have feelings, you have emotions, and you shouldn't be scared of expressing it. And I know many of us have been taught to like, oh, just grind it out, just keep pushing, keep going, but don't do that. If you feel not okay, it's okay to not feel okay. Seek that help, seek therapy, and most importantly, just reach out to someone and check in on them, but also use it to check in on yourself and keep yourself active and keep yourself moving. So again, if you didn't take anything else away from this, to all my black folks or anyone who can relate to it, therapy is not a weakness. It's wisdom. It's wisdom for yourself that can cherishly move on to bigger and better things. I know this was a shorter episode and there could be a lot of things happening in the background with me, but I just want to lock in and focus on this episode because it's so important to me that this stigma around black people and just therapy itself, we talk about it because the more we talk about it, the more we can address it and the many of us can have that support. All right. I appreciate you guys listening to this episode of the Jaywalking Podcast where we're telling one story at a time and taking one step at a time. I appreciate you guys. Check in on each other. And if you need any support or any help, please reach out to me, reach out to a family member, reach out to a friend, or use your resources, whether it's through your mobile device to text a random number to help with that support. I'm not sure what the number is and stuff, but I'll put all that in the description. And if you're ever going through something, just reach out to someone because I'm sure they rather have the weight of your tears on their shoulders than the weight of your casket. All right. Appreciate you guys. Take care. See you in the next episode. Take care.